Hi, it's Stephen here for Bland Designs, and today I'm going to try a background technique using two kinds of gesso and some water-soluble crayon-like products that I have here. Now, I did see a video where someone laid down onto their page in their art journal a layer of regular white gesso, let it dry, and then applied Tim Holtz's distress crayons to the top of that, and then put on another layer of gesso. And since these are water soluble, it meant that the colors sort of blended together, and then let it dry. The end result was a very muted background, which I thought was kind of neat. But then I got thinking, well, what would it be like with some of the other water-soluble products? Would they work as well as the distress crayons? And what I have out are my gelatos. I have Vicky Bouton's water-soluble crayons. I've got Jane Davenport's aqua pastels, and I've got a cheap set of Reeves water-soluble crayons. So I've got some tags out, and I'm just going to move some of this stuff over to the side for a moment. And since I've got 5 different products, I've got 10 tags. 5 tags I've already done some white gesso on already and let that dry. And on these 5 tags, I've done clear gesso and I've let that dry. So I'm going to apply each of these products to these 2 tags. So I'll start off by putting some of the distressed crayon on a gessoed tag, a white gesso tag, and the same crayons onto a clear gessoed page. Then I'm going to take white gesso and a paintbrush, and I'm just going to paint it on, let it dissolve the product underneath, and then dry. And I'm going to do the same thing with clear gesso. And we're going to compare them and see how well they work and if they give us different effects or not. So to start off with, I'm going to get out some distressed crayons, and I think I'm just going to I'm going to keep the colors as close as I can in the different products. So I'm just going to pick those 4 colors, a couple of blues, a purple, and a reddy shade. I think it's probably worn lipstick. And I know it's festive berries, but that's fine. Take a couple of tags, one from the white gessoed pile and one from the clear gessoed pile, and just apply some color. Now I'm going to do the same technique with all of these other products, but I'm not going to make you watch me apply these products to each one. What I'll do is I'll just show you what I'm doing here. And I'll do the same thing off camera with the other products. Otherwise, this video could go on for days. And for the sake of the comparison, I'm going to do on both tags the colors in the same order. And although it's not particularly exact to try and keep the exact same amount of crayon on each tag, I am trying to do that as best one can when you're, free-handing this kind of thing. Now, I'm just going to label these with the product so I know what I have on here. So these are the distress crayons. And the same for these. And I think it's pretty obvious which tags have the white gesso and which tags have the clear gesso. Okay, so that's the procedure I'm going to follow off camera with the other 4 products, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I've added my water-soluble crayons to each of the tags. I have 5 tags, as I said, in white gesso, 5 tags in clear gesso, and I've labeled each of them on the bottom what product I used. So let's take, to make this a little bit easier, let's just do all the white gessoed ones first. So move those out of the way. I have some white gesso, just ordinary run-of-the-mill white gesso, nothing fancy. And I'll just lay these out. So there are my 5 products: Distress Crayons by Tim Holtz, the Aqua Pastels by Jane Davenport, Vicky Bouton's Art Crayons, the Reeves cheap water-soluble crayons, and Gelatos, and white gesso. And I'm just going to put a little bit of gesso on each one of these, and take my paintbrush and just see what happens. So I'm checking to see how well the colors blend and dissolve. Of course, I've covered up the name of each product on these tags, but I know which ones are which, so I may have to rewrite it on top. Okay, so I have white gesso on top of these. I'm going to let this dry, and we're going to see what the end result is going to be. And then I'm going to take my 5 clear gesso tags, and I'm going to do the same thing with a new brush and clear gesso. Okay, I'm going to let those dry. I think I will apply a heat gun to them off camera, and we'll come back and we'll see what our end result is. Okay, the tags are all dry now, and here's the results. As you can see, the ones with the white gesso are very much muted, and the ones with the clear gesso, of course, are less muted, which is logical. However, I do think I may have overdone the amount of white gesso that I put on these tags, because earlier, when I first saw this technique, this is Distress Crayons on a gessoed page, and you can see I didn't use quite as much white gesso on it, so you do get a more mottled effect. But having said that, let's just look at the spreadability. It's kind of hard to see it on here, but the Aqua Pastels look like that they blended a little bit more smoothly than the Distress Crayons. The Vicky Bouton did not seem to move very much at all. The Reeves did move, but not quite as nicely as the Aqua Pastels. And the Gelatos, which you would expect because they're one of the very first of the water-soluble mediums to come out, they've been around for a long time, they did move, but I still think that the Aqua Pastels give a nicer overall effect. Again, I probably put too much white gesso on these. It would be better with less. In the clear gesso, you can actually see the blending, or not the blending. The Distress Crayons did not really move that much at all and start to form mud. The Aqua Pastels moved a little bit more, but not that much. The Vicky Bouton crayons Again, not that much movement. In fact, in all of these, with the exception of possibly the gelatos, there's very little movement of the crayon. I'm not sure what the ingredients are of a clear gesso, but I would suspect that there's something a little different about its chemical makeup than in the white gesso. So it's a very streaky kind of effect. Am I liking any of these effects? Not really. Not really. I like the effect I showed you on the art journal page. Just let me find it. I like that effect with the distressed crayons better than any of these. But to be fair, I want to do one more kind of experiment. So let's just pack these up for a minute and make some room. And I've got a small art journal out. Now, these pages have not been prepared with anything. There is no gesso on either one of these two pages. So what I'm proposing to do as a little experiment, without gessoing the background first, I'm going to put some of the color of each product. Oh, and I should do it in the same order as I did last time. So I'm going to do the distressed crayons, and I'm just going to use one color. I'm going to use the red. And I'm going to put it on both pages because one page I am going to paint white gesso over top of and the other one clear. So that's the distressed crayons. And then what was the next one I used? The Aqua Pastels by Jane Davenport. Just as an aside, these are more like coloring with a pencil crayon. They're not as creamy and smooth as the distressed crayons or any of the other products, actually. I'm rubbing this fairly hard to get color out of these. And then my next one is the Vicky Bouton, or Vicky Bouton. I want to say it the French-Canadian way. She is Canadian. However, she does pronounce her name as Vicky Bouton. One thing I don't like, another side of the distress of her art crayons, are they so soft the points break right off them immediately. That bothers me. It might not bother you, but it bothers me. Okay. Let's get down some of her color. Now, also, in terms of how smoothly this is going on when I apply it, in comparison to distressed crayons, there's a bit of drag. The distressed crayons are very creamy when they go on. And the next were the greaves. I've had these ones forever. Now they actually go on fairly creamy as well, which is kind of amazing because these are basically a cheap product in terms of in comparison to the distressed crayons or some of the other products. And when I mean by cheap, I mean in price. And then last of all, the gelatos. And there's my red gelato right there. And of course, the red gelatos are very creamy too. In fact, they're at least as creamy as the distressed crayons, if not a little bit creamier. One problem I find with them is getting a precise shape. Like, it's easier with these other products because they are not as creamy, and they're easier to outline. These just kind of go all over the place, but that could just be me. Okay, so let's get out a couple of paint brushes. Let's get out our white gesso. Now remember, I do not have a base of gesso on either one of these pages, and I'm not going to use quite as much as I did last time. So I used less, and by using less, I'm getting more of a blend. Okay, enough of that. And then let's grab the clear. Again, I'm just going to use a little amount. New brush. Actually, I'm kind of liking the way these are blending out a little better than with the white, although I am not getting rid of my harsher lines. Maybe the more I work it, the more I could do that. I think I am going to add just a touch more of the white gesso, just to see if I can get this to spread out a little further on the page. Now you can see I am actually kind of scrubbing with my paintbrush here, which would say to me that these products do not dissolve as well in the white gesso as they do in the clear for some reason. Okay, I'm not going to add any more. Okay, I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to hit it with the heat dryer and we'll come back and take another look at it. Okay, both pages are dry now. I used a heat dryer on them, and you can see that the white gesso gives you a mottled effect, which is to be expected, and the clear, the colors are a little bit more brilliant. But in terms of spreadability or blendability, the clear gesso seems to allow these products to blend out better than the white gesso does with them. Now, so what's the bottom line here as a background technique? And you saw how I used these on the tags that were already pre-treated with the two kinds of gesso. And you saw the example that I had done earlier with just the distressed crayons and white gesso. So what are my feelings about this as a background technique? Well, I think if you want to get some initial color down on a background page in an art journal or on a tag, I would suggest putting down a layer of white gesso first, and then use your distress crayons for this technique. I think the distress crayons blend the best in this technique. If you want more blendability, I would go with the clear gesso. And again, I think I would put clear gesso down first, then add my crayon, and then a top coat of gesso as well. It's an interesting technique. It gives you a different kind of effect, and I think both of them might have their place in your art journal. After all, they are only backgrounds. They're just meant to get some color down on your page, and then you'll be putting things on top of them, so a lot of this will disappear in your final product. But it's interesting. I was inspired by what I had saw on YouTube when somebody was doing it with distress crayons, and I wanted to see if it would work with my other water-soluble products. And bottom line is, this technique works best, I think, with the distress crayons. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope that gave you some food for thought and maybe inspired you to try a few experiments of your own. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.